Welcome into the Eagle Communications Sports Update right here on HutchPost.com. High school, college, pro, we keep you in the know. Alongside me, as always, Glen Grunwald. I am Daren Dunn. Today, we're going to sit down with Patrick Hall of HCC Volleyball. We'll talk a little bit about the Royals, that World Cup. Glen has some news on the U.S. Women's Open. But first, we start out with those Hutchinson Monarchs. When we visited with them last week, we talked about some of their struggles, the ups and downs, trying to get some wins at home. Well, Glen, they've done just that. They're right at 500 right now, and they're actually coming off a two-game winning streak.
They are coming off a two-game winning streak, but also still struggling a little bit. Seems to be win one, lose two, win two, lose one, and they had that big stand that they had 11 games in 8 days. It took a lot out of them. I think they were kind of lucky. They actually had a postponement on Sunday night when the storm moved through. They also had, because of that, the doubleheader was going to take place. The first game umpires didn't show up, so they had to cancel that whole night, got Monday off. Now they're on the road tonight to Tuesday, and they travel and come back home on Thursday. Again, continue to say we'll see how they do, but now it's time. This team struggled a little bit last year as well, but they started to put it together the last 2 weeks of the season. That'll be coming up here in July. That Walter Johnson League is tough, and of course the whole concept is try to get to the NBC tournament. So it's time for things to start to come together, and I'm sure they will. We'll have Mark Blackham on here, and hopefully next week to chat a little bit about where we are, because it's been about a month since we had him on. And the Monarchs still a good buy out there to go out for a ball game and take your whole family out there, but they need some support, so get out and watch them.
They are right at 500 across the board. You talk about last week, they go 3-3. They are 9-9 overall. That is 4-4 at home and 5-5 away. We talk about the last two games that they were victorious. They beat the Hayesville Aviators by the score of 7-6 and 3-1. You talk about the splits that they go through earlier last week. They get in against Salina. They get a 10-3 win, which is huge, but then they end up losing 3-2. So it's kind of that up and down like you're talking about.
Yeah, they're, again, just kind of a little bit of a valley and then a hill. And I know that Coach McHugh and Coach Mark Blackham need to try to get that taken care of. The bullpen's starting to shore up a little bit. The hitting's coming around. It's just a matter of those one-run games. They seem to lose those run totals, kind of like the Royals a little bit, lose that one run late in the innings. Of the closers need to come through, and that's part of it. Again, the chemistry, still working on it. They'll see what happens.
Good news this week, they will not face Valley Center. Two of their losses last week come against Valley Center on the road, where they dropped both games 3-2 and then 1-0. This week upcoming, actually going to have a birthday on Thursday. Pitcher Corey Roper is going to turn 24, so you have a chance to see him at home. They'll be playing the Newton Rebels, of course, Tuesday night against the Clearwater Cougars. They'll then play Clearwater again on Friday, and that's again an away game. Then on Saturday and Sunday, they'll get the Hayesville Aviators and Newton Rebels, respectively. So it's really consistency. Once you can start beating a team, you want to beat them more often than not.
Yeah, more often is the key. Get the wins more often, go 2-1 and start to get your strength. Again, the whole concept is to get into the playoffs, make your way back to Wichita so they can see what they can do in the NBC tournament.
Chance to see those Monarchs only one time this week, but as Glenn said, get on out to Hobart Detter Field on Thursday. A chance to see them right there in the heart of Cary Park. Hey, when we come back, our very own Glen Grunwald sitting down with Patrick Hall of HCC Volleyball. That's all next when we come back on the Eagle Communications Sports Update on HutchPost.com.
Welcome back to the Eagle Communications Sports Update, brought to you by Hutch Post. Glad to have you along, and we're going to join us now with Patrick Hall, the head volleyball coach at Hutchinson Community College. Good morning, Patrick. How you doing this morning? And here we are this summer. It's your off time, isn't it?
Well, sort of, Glenn. I don't think you ever have much of an off time these days with text messaging and constant communication. I don't think it ever ends.
Plus, you just came off of successful camps that you had this summer as well.
We did finish 2 weeks of camp. They went really well. We had 97 young ladies here from Hutch participating, and it was a big success.
Now, how far did some come in for your camp? Was it day camps primarily?
Well, we do a recruiting camp, which we call our out-of-area camp, and we brought in some young ladies from Nebraska and Colorado and all over Kansas for those, but those are limited number camps. But then when we do our 3rd through 8th grade camp, it's primarily within probably a 30-mile radius of Hutch.
HEC with Patrick's guidance. This is his third year, and had a very successful first 2 seasons, back-to-back Western Division championships, represented the region in the national tournament. This last year was up in Wyoming, and this year, how many coming back? I talked to you the other day, only a couple familiar faces.
Yeah, just 2 coming back this year. We did have 3, but just this weekend, Kavehi decided to redshirt, so she'll sit out this year. She'll probably be back in January. So we have 12 new players coming in.
And you're losing a pretty good one with Tara Wade moving on down the road as well, and a couple of the Serbian girls are gone. So I know you'll reload, and that's what community college volleyball is all about, reloading every time you turn around.
Well, that's what community college coaching is all about, period. And I love that aspect of community college coaching. I love the constant change. It's a lot of fun for me. I love that turnover. I love having to build a completely different chemistry every single year, and being able to work with new players every year. It's a lot of fun.
Where you primarily network, where do you find some of your players? Like you said, text messaging, trying to get them in here, to get them in here and rebuild that team. This is a busy time. People think it's the off season. It's not for you.
Well, we're actually finished recruiting a little bit early for us this year, but it never stops. Now we're looking at 2015 and 2016, and actually even looking at some 2017 players that we've been looking at in the late spring and during the summer. But yeah, you know, you're constantly out there all spring. We travel every single weekend. We're at 1 or 2 tournaments out on the road, both in Kansas and out of state. The big qualifiers are in Colorado and Texas and Vegas. So we make those trips all spring. Like I said, every single weekend we're on the road.
You also had to replace a key assistant this year as well.
Yeah, and I think we're pretty lucky. Of course, I've had 2 great assistants in Brandy Hood and why am I drawing a blank about Ting Louis from last year, who took a head coaching job up out of JUCO in Iowa. So I've had 2 great assistants 2 years in a row. I think we have another one in Kaylee Clark, who's from Garden Plain, played volleyball up in Minnesota, and so she's somewhat local, very familiar with Kansas. That's going to be a great asset for us, and she is a terrific young lady.
Well, we'll have more. We'll have more back with Patrick as the year progresses, as this fall starts to come, and we'll have you back more. So thanks for spending some time with us. When we return, Daren and I'll talk about some World Cup. We'll talk about the Royals. We'll talk about the Women's Open that took place this last week at Pinehurst. Lots more coming here on Eagle Communications Sports Update.
Back into the Eagle Communications Sports Update right here on HutchPost.com. High school, college, pro. We're keeping you in the know. Once again, Glen Grunwald, I am Daren Dunn. We're going to look at the Royals here shortly, but first we talk about that World Cup. What a heartbreaker for the USA national team, tying with Portugal when they almost had that game under wraps.
Yeah, they led it 2-1 and let that just. I mean, you even heard the interviews with some of the players. They really thought it in the books. One of them even says they could see it in the headlines that they're going to advance with a 2-0 record, and they tied at 2-2. Now several are knotted up at the top. They take on Germany coming up this next Thursday. But they tied with Portugal at 2-2, and I think some of the ratings were really high for some of the television ratings, as high as the NBA Final Game 7. So interest is really catching on, and we'll see what they do as they take on Germany now. 2-2 tie to Portugal, kind of like kissing your sister, isn't it?
It's a little bit. We saw a post about that. Our very own Coach Knack from Hutch High saying a little bit about your getting ready to have that big old wet kiss. You're going to plant it on Kate Upton, and your sister jumps in. And in fact, I was listening to his daughter, Kylie Nacarado, on my way back from Lawrence this weekend, and she's out there in Manhattan on one of our Eagle Communications sister stations, if you will. And she mentioned that. She talked about how, Dad, don't be talking about that.
Don't be talking about that.
Don't be saying those things. But the interesting thing, you mentioned the NBA, Cristiano Ronaldo, kind of a strange game he had against the USA. And I noticed some people on social media saying, Cristiano Ronaldo kind of choking like LeBron James a little bit.
You know, he was injured a little bit, but he came up. He got the big pass to the header that tied it up at 2-2. And I think the anticlimactic part of it was just like, oh, we're about to win, and the U.S. is going to go up 2-0, and all of a sudden, and you saw him in the streets in New York. You saw him in the streets of Chicago watching this on big screen TVs. So now they have to regroup. They have a day less to prepare than Germany has. Germany's had an extra day because they weren't playing, so now they take on the Germans. We'll see what happens on Thursday.
Kind of some interesting scenarios there. Obviously, if the USA wins, they're good to go. They could draw and could be good to go. But if they lose, then it comes down to that Ghana-Portugal matchup, and then it comes down to goal differential. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We turn now, Glenn, to your Women's Open. Some interesting players of note in that Women's Open over the weekend.
Well, it was. People are always here in Hutchinson, the surrounding area, interesting in the U.S. Women's Open. It was played at Pinehurst Country Club. Michelle Wee was able to win that, the 24-year-old out of Hawaii. But Lucy Lee, 11 years old. Think about it, folks. She was 11 years old, and she's playing as an amateur in the U.S. Women's Open. She did not make the cut, but certainly, and a young lady, again, is out of Hermoso Beach, California. You're going to see her name coming your way. A little local note is Catherine Hull Kirk, who, if that sounds familiar, she's married to a gentleman over in Wichita, made her home in Wichita, played here at Flint Hills National back in about 2002 in the U.S. Women's Amateur, and loved Wichita, bought a house in Wichita, fell in love with somebody, got married, and she ended up being tied for 26th going into the final day, ended up tied for 49th, but she's consistently on the top 20 money winners on the tour. And anyway, she is a little local tie, so to speak. So Catherine Hull Kirk, check out her name, follow her as she goes, because she's a local that lives in Wichita.
Glenn, keeping you in the know of a couple of names to watch out for as you'll see them progress in the near future. We progress now to the Royals. Kansas City went on that 10-game winning streak before dropping a couple, but wow, those bats you mentioned had to come alive. They've come alive, and they've really been doing well.
Well, red hot, white hot, and then Royals hot, and then all of a sudden they dropped to 4 games, but got a big win over Greinke. And I understand from what some of the players that were here when Greinke was here, like the Billy Butlers, and were a little disgruntled with the fact that Greinke gave up on him, left for better pasture, so to speak. Now is out with the Dodgers. Great pitcher, kind of got his act together now, but he came in and lost 5-3 to the Royals last night. So now the game 2 is tonight. So let's see if the Royals can keep the winning ways. It's kind of fun. I guess they had a sold-out crowd the other night as well. So things, when the Royals win, it makes it a lot of fun for everybody. So we're looking forward to more Royals baseball just around the corner.
You get a lot of those bandwagon fans. You see 10 wins, suddenly everybody is packing the K, packing Kauffman Stadium. With the Greinke situation, you think a little bit of et tu, Brute? Et tu, Greinke? So sometimes when you get people like that, and I'm sure the same exists with LeBron James and the Cavaliers, when you're moving from place to place merely because of talent, merely because of a paycheck, kind of the league loses its value a little bit from when there used to be all these players that stayed with one team, tried and true, season through season, and they finished their careers there. So money really has changed things. It has changed the world. For the Royals, after those 10 straight wins and a couple of losses, they're now at 40-36. You mentioned they're coming up against the Dodgers. They'll have the Angels later this weekend. And of course, they beat the Dodgers already, as you mentioned, 5-3. And were coming off that loss to the Mariners at 2-1. But really interesting to see what they will do from here on out. Hey, for Glen Grunwald, I am Daren Dunn, high school college pro. We are keeping you in the know. Check us out next week on HutchPost.com for your Eagle Communications Sports Update.